Good morning again. Well, Usha talked a lot about some of the things I'm going to touch on too. But one of the things I want to do first is when we talk about teaching kids to self-regulate and know themselves and know what they need and things like that. One of the things that, being a yoga lover, that's one of the things I bring to my classroom, and it's one of the things that they tend to love too because I love it. And you'll find that whatever you love, your kids are going to love too because you carry the enthusiasm and the joy of it with them. So one of the things we do is the kids learn to tune into when they need to move because kids need to move at regular intervals. So one of the things they can do is anybody at any time can call a yoga break. And we also learn a little bit of self-control and understanding within that because they realize that, okay, you know, if I'm in mid-sentence and we're in mid-concept or explanation, obviously you can't call a yoga break and freeze everything and everybody runs out and does yoga for 2 minutes. But you can call a yoga break and at the next opportunity we'll go ahead and do that. So, and we only take 2 minutes. It requires a little self-control. And what I want to do is invite everybody to take a yoga break right now and stretch just a little bit. And if you have a favorite pose, you are welcome to just do it. And if you would like to follow something that I'm going to do, you're welcome to do that too. So if you go ahead and stand up, and we're going to take the hands to the heart. And inhale and interlace the fingers. Exhale and stretch them forward. Inhale, stretching the arms up. Exhale, letting the hands float down behind, clasping the hands palms together, inhaling and opening the chest. And if you'd like, you can even exhale and bend over, or you can go back to the beginning, hands at the heart. Stretching out the back of the legs and inhaling back up. And we'll do it again at least one more time. You can do it your own breath pace, or you can follow me if you like. Inhale and interlace. Exhale, stretch forward. Inhale, up. Exhaling down. Inhaling and opening the heart. And exhaling back to prayer position or bending. And inhaling back up to center. And exhale over to hands back to the sides. And kids are encouraged to do their own yoga poses. Once we have a routine down, they know what ones they want, and they're welcome to do whatever they like. So if you have a favorite pose you want to do right now, you're welcome to do that. Or you can follow if you'd like. Find our calm and centeredness of tree pose. I have a student who, before his math time test, he'd go over on the floor and do child's pose, rock pose, because it was a centering and calming pose, and he could do his time test better that way. And if you're ready, you can move over to the other side. And inhaling up. And exhaling down. How are we doing? Are we feeling a little bit refreshed? Yes. Is that good? Okay. All right. You can have a seat if you're ready. Okay. So again, that's part of self-regulation. And when I think of role of a teacher, there's so many things that come to mind. And when we were brainstorming about the class, we kind of grouped it into some categories. And so I'll try to use those as a guide. But the first thing that really comes to mind is the role of a teacher is to create an environment where that child can blossom, where that child can be themselves. And so in order to be yourself and to blossom, what kind of conditions do you need? Anybody? You think? Safety. You got to be safe. What other things might you need?
Physical comfort.
Physical comfort, yes. Safety. Acceptance, exactly, yes. Anything else? Kindness. Calmness, yes, exactly. You have to be able to feel what's going on inside. So a lot of what happens, I think, right off the bat is, the teacher is creating an environment, your energy goes out, your aura goes out around those kids, and they have to know that you are there. The boundaries need to be clear. And Swami, Swami in the book Education for Life, he talks about not spoiling children. Okay, and he talks about not giving in to every, all the whims and all those kinds of things. But you have to have that environment that they know what is okay and what's not okay. And so boundaries are real clear, and you encourage the kind of heart qualities that allow the child's natural gifts to come out. And the best thing to do in order to create that is to model. Gandhi said, be the peace you want to see in the world. Sometimes there are times when that's been my mantra, be the change I want to see in my classroom. Okay, if something's happening, I have to often look at myself. It's like, okay, what's going on with me that this is happening here? And is there something that I can do to help facilitate that process? And just modeling that. So that's one of the things that's super important. And also I feel like one of the things that I try to focus on is through your modeling, through what you teach in the classroom, through the activities that you do, you try to inspire. But then you have to respond, and you have to really tune in and listen and see what they're getting, where they're at, to find out where that next step is for them. So I'm going to attempt to tell a joke here because I thought it was apropos. And so this little boy comes out of the sanctuary, and he's standing in the foyer staring at these plaques on the wall, and the pastor comes out, and the little boy says, "Pastor, what are all these names on these plaques?" And the pastor says, "Well, those are the names of all the men and women who've died in the service." And the little boy's eyes get really big, and he says, "The 8:30 or the 10:45?" So, and it just goes to show, I've had some experiences, and I was trying to remember the specifics of them in my classroom where that's happened. You think you're being really clear and you're explaining something, but all of a sudden, you come around, you find out that you're not being clear. It's being construed as a whole different way. And you'll find that there are certain students in your classroom that are barometers for that. And I always remember Usha saying, I know who was her barometer all the time, and I know who mine was too. And this is because there are students that often, you're going through things and they have these looks on their face, and you're not sure what that means. But you can look at that one student, and if she's got a funny look on her face, something's wrong. And you haven't been clear, and then you need to check in with that. Because it's so easy to have in your mind, especially when you're new and you're trying to figure out how it all works. Think, oh, okay, well, I'm going to talk about this, and this is what I'm going to do. But then, you need to do that. It's like Yogananda's energization exercises. You tense with will, and then you relax and feel. So, you put out your energy with will, but then you have to relax and feel what's coming from the kids. You feel, okay, what's going on her face? Does she have a quizzical look? Does she feel confident? And then you check in with them. Okay, so it's part of monitoring what's happening. Are they getting it? Are they responding? And what levels are they all at? All the teachers here can attest to the fact that having multi-ages in the classroom, you have to know that, okay, what is appropriate for this student to be getting it at is different for this student. And knowing that that's okay, and having it be okay for them too, and giving them the freedom to know that, okay, you're in 3rd grade and this is the first time you've heard that. This 6th grader's heard it several times already, and so I don't expect you to get it the way they do. And so having that confidence to know that wherever they are at personally is fine. And it isn't even related to grade. It's related to where you are and your level of understanding. I'm going to check my notes here real quick. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was spiritual practices. And I know, coming from a public school background, that was a totally foreign idea for me in the classroom, because of course that was a big no-no. You don't do that kind of thing. And so, and it was something that I was not comfortable sharing in a public forum. It's like, well, that's always been something that had been personal for me and not something that I shared or taught. And so in my mind I thought, okay, well, that must mean that we're gonna pray every day, and we're gonna om every day, and we're gonna chant every day, and we're going to do all these things. We're gonna talk about saints all the time, and all those things are great, and I love doing those things, and if that's what you're comfortable with, that's great. what I found for myself is it was a lot easier for me to come in through the back door with things, to look at what are the other things that can be spiritual experiences for people. Well, for me, it's being in nature, okay? Being out in nature, bringing my dog into the classroom and having the sweetness come from having her around. Art, I mean, art is such a spiritual experience. Music is a spiritual experience. All those different things, you know, you can experience the spiritual through lots of different avenues, and it really depends on the students. There are students, I've had years where the students didn't really want all that much to do with anything that really sounded overtly spiritual, okay? And I remember Usha sharing one time that she had a year what all she could do was have them lie on the floor and listen to uplifting music. That was the extent of what those kids were open to. Otherwise, you know, you're pushing them the square peg in the round hole or whatever, or you're trying to force something, and what does that create? Resistance. Okay, so it comes back to the same thing, finding where they are. What are they receptive and open to, and letting them receive that on whatever level is available. And you know, I had just written down here, you know, something we often do, and I've never had a class that hasn't been open to healing prayers, doing healing prayers for people, because again, it's about other people. Doing healing prayers, of course the arts, nature. And one of my favorite is just noticing things. And it's something that's just so powerful, you know, and I'll never forget noticing the noticing that was happening. We were going to the library and we were walking across this parking lot with a group, and one of the 6th grade boys, it was a large group that year, one of the 6th grade boys just stopped everybody. He goes, "Oh, stop you guys, look at those clouds." And all of a sudden, you know, usually when they're walking to the library, they're just, you know, jabber, 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 jabber. Everybody was just stood stock still, looked up, and they were exquisite clouds. They were the kind that have the gold lining all around the outline, and they were just fabulous. And there were a lot of older boys in that class, and everyone was just entranced and silent for a period of time watching those clouds. And that's something that I think has been encouraged throughout the years, all the way from, you know, I don't think we had preschool when those boys started, but I know certainly with Helen, and I know certainly with Usha too, and Karen, and I know everybody has a tendency to do that. And it's something that when you start doing it, again, you're modeling it, the kids pick up on it, and they start noticing things too, and it helps bring them inside. And what more spiritual experience could you want other than going inside and finding your center and your peace in that way? So, and I'm interested to hear, what are some things that you think about that could be spiritual experiences for kids, maybe that we haven't mentioned, other than the arts or nature? Any others? Yes.
In our school, we actually are working with UNESCO on art mural. That is, this is a project that I believe it's in 2010, will end up in Egypt. And again, it's another theme is around bridging, where there are many communities, not just school communities, but all around the world that are going to be contributing to what we think will be the longest mural ever that will go in the Guinness Book of World Records. But it is, of course, the essence behind that is bridging peace right now in an international community where our governments haven't been very successful.
And yeah, joining your energy with others, you know, creating that sense of oneness. I mean, there's spirituality right there, and creating beauty and putting out willpower can be spiritual. I mean, there's no little box that you put having a spiritual experience in. It can be anything done with the right attitude and with the right frame of mind. So just that may not be as much of a revelation to you as it was to me in the beginning, but anyway, I just wanted to share that. Yes, Helen?
For us, it's music. Just singing a chant that they don't even know the name of it, like Gopala. They don't really know all the meanings of it. And another thing is to write or say something nice to each other.
Yes.
It's very uplifting.
Acts of kindness, exactly. A lot of times in February, different classes express that in different ways. We have, Kindness Week or acts of kindness, or like Usha shared, the secret pals. A lot of times our class would want to do things like that, or sometimes the older kids just doing things for someone else. Sometimes at the end of the year, they would want to do something for the younger kids, like put on a harvest fair, or put on last year, what did we do? A geometry fair. They wanted to do a geometry fair. This was the sweetest thing. The kids in the older class, they work a long time to earn their class party. And when they earned their class party, they could have done anything they wanted to with their afternoon. And they said, oh, we should have a geometry party. And they decided that it would be more fun to put on a geometry fair for the younger kids than to just have the party for themselves. And so that's when to me, that's a spiritual experience. I don't know. It can come in lots of different guises, so to speak.
I've had it. Kids, when maybe they're figuring out something mathematically and they'll suddenly see a pattern, and that will be a big spiritual experience for them. One day we were talking about palindromes, and we were looking at words and numbers, and it's the same both ways, forward or backward, it doesn't matter. It's like, but you could just see the light start to shine from them as they kind of got this sense of wonder and order in the universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then also in the next thing kind of ties into that, and that is kind of framing and naming experiences. So kids know when they're having experiences, or just having them tune into it. So in an experience like that, when they've looked at this mathematical pattern and they're just fascinated with it, and then just thinking, oh wow, and how does that make you feel? And it's just kind of like a little, or how does that feel, or and that's even kind of verbal. You can do it in different things, or what is that? How does that make you want to move? Or how does that, what kind of picture would you like to draw with that? Or how would you like to express that feeling of beauty or connectedness that you feel? And so then, just helping frame that in a way that they can realize that that's happening, because, not that it always has to be conscious, wow, I'm having a great feeling, but, sometimes it's helpful to make them aware of that. So they can contrast to other times when maybe they're not. So as far as the pointing out and naming activities, like for example, I know with Trina, it's a great skill that I have picked up on, and she talks about just naming what she sees. So instead of evaluating, so for example, if a child's out there and he's got the ball on the tee and he hits the ball and he's, what do they want to do? They're going, did you see that? Did you see that? And instead of saying, wow, that was a great hit. Okay, you've put an evaluation on it. It's good. It's whatever. She'd say, wow, yeah. You stood there, you held the bat really tall, you swung it, and you hit that ball, and it went all the way over there. Okay, so you've just named, you've shown them, you've mirrored back to them, I was paying attention and I saw that thing you did. I'm not labeling it good, bad, indifferent. I'm showing you that I've seen it, I've given you my attention, and it doesn't have to be about me giving you approval for something. And it really, I think, helps kids to get what they need from you, which is your attention, without getting your approval and your evaluation of everything that they do. Because we all know the kids, and probably those of you who do art are most familiar with this, is you're doing is this good? Do you like it? Is this okay? Is this, and maybe your kids don't do that, and that's wonderful, but I'll tell you what, there are always certain kids that want to do that. They want your stamp of approval. They want you to tell them when they're done, when they're complete, how it's been, and all those things. And that's not necessarily being the most centered, is it? Okay, you're being externally oriented. So just observing what kids are doing, mirroring back to them, or even when it's in a negative thing, if somebody's gotten frustrated, sometimes kids don't know. Have you ever had a situation where a kid's really frustrated and you say, wow, you're really angry. I'm not angry. It's like, oh, okay, we're not angry. So instead of maybe necessarily labeling that, which sometimes can be helpful, you say, wow, your body's stiff, your hands are in fists, and your face looks like this. You know? And then all of a sudden, you've just given them a mirror of what they're doing, and then all of a sudden, I think there's something a little grounding about that. It's like, oh, I'm doing that? Wow, okay. And then they can put in a label on it if they want. Well, I must be angry, okay. And then maybe going from there and finding out what can be done about that. So framing experiences. And I remember one time, Usha, I love this, I had a student that walked in the classroom one morning, came in and said, Usha, Sandy, did you see that great spider web out there? It's really beautiful. And we said, well, no, show us. You know, we went out and it was way up, okay? And I remember Usha said, well, you must be happy because you were looking up. And when you tend to be happy, you look up like that. And I remember he was like, oh. And, you know, I don't know if it made any big significant difference to him, but it was just a noticing. It's helping them understand something that's happening. And so and you can use things like that to help change energy. So if we know being upward or looking upward makes us happy, then maybe if we're not happy, maybe if we look upward, we bring our arms upward and do activities like that, we can raise our energy too. So it's all in teaching them what they can do for themselves, recognizing what's happening already, okay, by framing experiences. Holy cow. Let's see what else we have here. And some of the stuff I was going to talk about was things that you're going to get with Becky Bailey in the DVDs that we'll be watching each time. I guess we'll be watching segments of them. Yeah, she talks about things like that too, recognizing and helping them label when something is being helpful. For example, if you're sitting down, you're trying to get circles started, and maybe not everybody's cooperating. That's the word I'm looking for. Maybe everybody isn't quite cooperating, and you have somebody that does. They come down, or they finally do, and you say to them, wow, you came right over and you sat down so that we can get started. That was helpful. Okay? And again, you know, you're just acknowledging what they did as being helpful. Well, they may just think I just came over and sat down, but you know, there was some way that contributed to the group. And sometimes that's good for them to know, you know, that this is something that's being helpful, something that's not. Are there any questions at all? I feel like I'm just going on and on. So, trying to fit it all in. Okay. Have you had any experiences where you can think of maybe students could have benefited from having a little feedback given to them in that situation, or done that and found it to be helpful?
There was an experience just recently out here where one kid was really upset, and I don't remember what he was upset about, but there was something happening that he didn't like, and he couldn't figure out what to do. And I think it was Ellie, one of the girls, was up in the tree, and she was up there looking down at this and then giving him suggestions. Well, you could do this. You could take your toy. Oh, I think it was that other kids were playing where he wanted to play. Well, you could there's a bush over there that you could use too, or you could ask them to move, or you could go find some other toy to play with, or she was just spouting out all these different ideas. And he was in no mood to even listen, you know. He was just kind of seeing her as yet another obstacle in his way or something. And he finally just kind of stomped off, and I looked at this, and she was up there sort of like, you know. And I looked up at her and I said, you were really coming up with all kinds of solutions. You were ready there to just give him all kinds of ideas. She said, yeah, I was. And I said, he just wasn't in the mood, was he? He just wasn't in the same place you were. She said, no, he wasn't. And then she was perfectly happy to go on. But it was just one of those where there wasn't any perfect conclusion. It was just labeling and helping her see what it was that was going on. And she was just perfectly happy to say, yep, you know, I was right there, but oh well.
And that's a good skill too, to be helpful first, but to know when to say, I've done my best, and it's up to that person to decide to be happy or not.
Right.
And you know, and that was the other thing, you know, knowing that you can choose. You know, you can choose to be happy. And I know Karen had a great story about choosing to be happy. with I don't know, is this the time that we were going to do that? It
I
just
can
came.
tell
It
you,
just came across that. Go ahead.
Some years ago, there was a girl who was in first grade, and she had a real difficult time periodically, like basically she'd have a big meltdown every single day, because she'd get upset about something that wasn't going her way, and she would have a big meltdown, and she would let it color a good part of the day. She had a really hard time coming out of it, and Helen was a great one for helping with this, about modeling it for me, and so I could help this girl with it, helping her gradually to see that she could choose to be happy or not, that this situation had occurred, and she was upset about it, and it was done now, and she could choose to have a good experience the rest of the day, or she could choose to be miserable. And I mean, we worked on this gradually, but day after day after day after day. But partway through the year, she started really kind of getting this and being able to make that choice. And the one thing that was just so sweet to me later was she came from home with this story that she was saying, oh, I was upset with my dad. He wouldn't let me do what I wanted to do, and I knew I could choose to be happy or I could choose to be upset and miserable. And I didn't want to be happy yet, so I went to my room and I stomped around in there, but pretty soon I thought, you know what, this isn't very much fun. So I decided I might as well be happy. And then she went and joined the family. And another really sweet thing was with this same girl, later on, her parents were telling me she was talking to her 4-year-old brother, and she's saying to him, well, Andrew, you know, this happened, and you can choose to be miserable about it, or you can choose to be happy.
Passing on her wisdom.
Finally, she got it.
Yeah. So, you know, and a lot of it is just like that, teaching kids how they can help themselves, what they can do for themselves, and how to tune into what's happening to begin with. Yeah, she can choose to be happy. You can choose to try to help people and then say, oh well, okay. Or I can be enthusiastic about this, or I can drag my feet through it. And comparing, how does it feel when you do each thing? And you know, that touches on what the last topic was. What Usha talked about already a little bit was providing the direct experiential things, the way kids learn. And yeah, you know, you can come up with some of these things. You can sort of manufacture a few things a little bit. Like I know in our Secret Pals, we also do it in the form, it's kind of like in the form of I think they call it Secret Santa or something, where, you know, everybody chooses somebody else in the classroom that's their secret person, and they give them, you know, secret gifts. And at that point, you know, there's always there are always people who are really good, they're getting stuff every day, and then there are those that aren't. And they have to wait, maybe they get something big at the end, or maybe not, you know. And they look at those experiences, and sometimes we do that several different times, and they have different people, and then we talk about it sometimes. Wow, what was more enjoyable for you? Did you enjoy sneaking the gifts into somebody else's desk, or did you enjoy peeking in your desk every day to see what you got? Okay, and which was more fun for you? And they can compare those experiences. And there are always those who think giving and sneaking is more fun, and there are all those that are all about, you know, what am I getting, you know? And there's no judgment about it. It's just noticing how it feels and comparing the experiences and having them learn to do that. There's a great game that Nitai, that I learned from Nitai, and it's called Fortunately, Unfortunately, and it helps them with even-mindedness that way and looking at both things. And so the game goes around the room, and the first person starts a story and says, well, fortunately, we're going to go camping this weekend. So the next person in line has to say, unfortunately, it rained, or they decide something unfortunate that happened. The next person then comes up with something fortunate. But fortunately, we had rainproof tents. unfortunately, the tent's leaked, and and you can just go around and doing the activity, and it really, I think on some level, it's really interesting how it gets in there that, things are up and down, they go up, they go down, and you know what? In the grand scheme of things, it's all the same anyway. We're looking at the same ball of wax, just from a different angle, basically. And so, let's see. But a lot of them, like she said, you just have to grab things in the moment and find out how things are going. And there's a lot about allowing children to blossom and open on their own, but that doesn't mean you don't step back and intervene when you need to. Sometimes you can't let things play out because you see the energy going south in places. And I remember one year I had a rather large group. We went on an overnight field trip in the fall, and we had this event happen where the boys decided to play a practical joke on the girls, and they stole all their shoes, and I don't know what they did with them. Just stole their shoes, I think is what it was, and hid them or something, so they didn't have their shoes in the morning when they wanted to go out. And it was kind of cute, and it was kind of fun, and oh yeah, haha, that was funny. And then the girls decided to do something to get back at the boys, okay? And it was all kind of in good fun for a little while, but then when the next trip in the spring came along, they were plotting ahead of time, and I could hear them. They were plotting. It's like, oh, what are we going to do? We're really going to get them. And it started getting into this, we're going to get them mode, and things were really going south. And then there was all this fear on the girls' part. Oh, what are they going to do to us now? They're going to put snakes in our sleeping bags, or they were just really it was not fun anymore, and it was getting to be something like that. So the girls were already planning their retaliation and how nasty it was going to be after the boys did whatever nasty thing they were going to do. And so I gathered the girls together, and I said, you know what? You know what would really shock them? It would really surprise them? They would never get this. Do something nice for them. Like leave them a present or something. And they were like, what? So, but they were like, okay, they're kind of amenable to the idea. So they got some little glow sticks, or I don't know, something or other. And one of the dads takes the boys out for the nature walk to look at the stars, and they're like, yeah, we know what's going on. Those girls are in there plotting something. So they were ready to tear back in there and find out what was going on. And when they found these toys and things, they were like, oh my gosh, this is really nice. This is really sweet. And so but the girls were still worried about what the boys were going to do, because the other shoe hadn't dropped yet. Okay, the boys hadn't done their thing, and they still thought they were going to do something nasty. Well, the boys ended up going out with the dad to the store and got a single rose for each girl and laid it on their pillow. And I'll tell you what, just thinking about it gives me goosebumps. We were up in a loft, and I was out taking them for the, quote, stargazing walk, and they knew it was happening. We came in, and they were dying to get up there and see, and they went in there, and not a word. They were dumbfounded. Their jaws dropped, and I still have a picture of all of them with the roses. They stood there looking at these roses and their hearts were just wide open. And that was the end of that. There was sweetness overflowed. There was no more, and the energy in that class was never better. I mean, it was always good to begin with, but they really were really bonded in sweetness at that point and in trust for each other. And so you got to take the situation and you decide when to let it play out, when to let them experience that feeling of, oh, what are they going to do to me? And I'm feeling all creepy and yucky, and I don't like this, anymore. And then how they can turn that around, and how with your act first of being kind to somebody else, it may come back in kind, it may not, but there you are, with your heart open and seeing what happens there. So
Cool. The first